Hey everybody, welcome to lesson 6 of the Pre-Columbian Codices lesson series. I am Itzlia Hekat from Kalbetakanawak, and today I want to talk to you about the calendar because when it comes to the calendar, there is so much confusion, and it's actually a very simple process when we look specifically at the Pre-Columbian Codices. And if we only look at the Pre-Columbian Codices and we don't look at any other source, it actually makes it much easier than if we were looking at other sources, because other sources really confuse the whole process. And so we have so many calendar calibrations or correlations. We have so many different people who say they know the calendar, but what I'm here to tell you is the mechanism of the calendar, how the calendar works, where it starts. The only thing you need to do is look at the Pre-Columbian Codices. So if you ask somebody about the Mexica calendar and they tell you, okay, I understand, and you say, okay, well, what are your sources? And they say, oh, well, I follow Sahagún from the Florentine Codex, or I follow Diego Duran. Even if they say I follow this particular elder, all of those are going to be red flags, because the only people who understand the calendar are the people who understand how to read the Pre-Columbian Codices, and that's it. Okay, and I've learned that the hard way. I did a lot of work on the calendar for many years, but I was just so frustrated because nobody seemed to understand it. Even though they said they did, I could tell, I don't think you know what you're talking about. So I shelved it for a long time, and I was online on Facebook one day in the Mexica history group, and I was asking about the calendar, and there were a couple of people talking about it, and I was again frustrated because I didn't really think they understood. And this person private messaged me. His name is Ruben Ochoa, and he said, "Hey, look, if you want to know about the calendars of how it works, come and see me in Compton." And so I went over there and I saw him, and he was actually the first person to actually teach me how to read Pre-Columbian Codices, and that was several years ago now. I don't know, probably close to 8 or 10 years ago. But that was actually the first time that I I learned, like, wow, there is a lot of information in these codices, and especially when it comes to calendar, there is a lot of documentation. And so, an elder once said that if you can't explain something in a simple way, then you don't really understand it yourself. And so, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to just explain it to you using the Pre-Columbian Codices only, and I'm not going to share any other source to simplify the process. And I hope that if we do it this way, that it'll become a much easier thing to understand, and it'll show you that, hey, just stick to the Pre-Columbian Codices, and don't worry about what anybody else says or does. The mechanism and the guide is all here. Okay, and so that's what this lesson is going to be about. And so this is lesson 6. Welcome everybody. We're going to start with this date. This date is one coat in our tradition. It's called a tonali. On the days within our Shopoali or the tonali. And so one coatl is actually the most important date that we have when it comes to calibrating our calendar, because one coatl was the day that Tenochtitlan officially fell. Okay, and we actually have the words of the people who were there documented in the Florentine Codex, Book 12, page 122. Book 12 is devoted to the Spanish conquest. And so, if you ever want to read a Native American perspective of the Spanish conquest, I highly recommend the Florentine Codex. It's book 12. It's all in Nahuatl. And so it's going to be the perspective of the native people. And so it's a really great read. This in particular is very important. And when the shields were laid down, when we fell, it was in the year count 3 house, and in the day count, it was 1 serpent. And those of you who are able to read Nahuatl, you can read it here. Okay, and so this is really important because it's not possible to calibrate the Mesoamerican calendar unless you have a calibration date. Unless you have a date that tells you this is where this particular tonali is in this time of year. Without that, nobody would know the calendar. But however, we have this one coatl. Not only is it documented in the Florentine Codex, but every single source after the conquest that writes about the fall of Tenochtitlan, every single one of them identifies one coat as the tonali. And so there's no question that this was the day that Tenochtitlan fell. And so this is what we're going to use as our anchor to figure out where we're at in the calendar. However, you may be thinking, well, all of these were written after the conquest. How valid can they be? Well, when we work backwards from this date, when we use the Pre-Columbian Codices, you will see that, in fact, we can just use the Pre-Columbian Codices if we wanted to. You don't even need this date, and you can actually figure it out from there. Okay, but we're using this date for simplicity. But as I discussed, I hope that it'll become clear to you that all we need is the Pre-Columbian Codices, and we don't need any other source. But this is here to just show you that this date is the most important date that we have in the native calendar. And I also say native or Mesoamerican calendar because this was the calendar in Tenochtitlan, but everywhere else they kind of follow the same calendar count because as I taught you in the lesson 4 with the tribute list, if you're giving tribute, you all need to be following the same calendar, okay? And so although some other groups may have had different names for their tonali, rather than one coat, maybe it was a different name, like one thunder or something, or one rain, but we're following the same mechanism, which will be revealed as we go. This page right here is absolutely fundamentally the most important page when it comes to the calendar. This is actually a calendar calibration page. And so I'll be showing you all of the different pages that discuss specifically the calibration of the calendar and all of the pre-Columbian codices. There are several pages across several books, and they're all written in different ways. And so this is the first one. These are scenes of Tlaloc. There's 5 of them. And so most likely it's referring to the different directions. And as we learned in one of our other classes, I think it was lesson 3 actually, when we talked about all the directions and what the directions meant, well, each of these year bearers actually fall within a particular direction. So you can actually look at the year bearer and you can actually figure out which direction we're talking about when we're looking at the different looks. In this case right here, it's damaged, but this is the year Acatl. And as we learn in lesson 3, that's going to be the eastern direction. So this is the eastern direction. And then over here, this is Tochli. And so Tochli is going to be the southern direction. And right here you have Kali, and Kali is in the western direction. And we have Tekpat, and this is in the northern direction. You see me looking up when I do that because I actually have the first page of the Codex for Jeffrey Meyer is actually on my wall here, so it's actually there so I can reference it. So yeah, that is those are all of the direction, and of course we have the center as well. As we learned in lesson 3, there's always a center in our direction. So this is just showing Tlaloc in different scenes from all of the different directions. And so in some you'll see abundance with corn, others you'll see darkness. It will be aligned to what we studied in lesson 3 if you want to discuss that further. But the point of this is to look at these dates. Okay. So what this is telling us, this little triangle, this little blue triangle that the Kali or the house is sitting on top of is actually called the year bearer sign. And this tells us that we're talking about the year. And it actually has a 1. This is a numeral 1. So this is 1 kali. So this is literally telling us in 1 kali, you need to start your years with 1 osomatli. And so this is a calibration page. In the year 1 tekpat, you need to start all of your days with 1 mikisli. And here in years 1 akat, you need to start your years with 1 sipakli. And here you have 1 tochli and 1 koskakwautli. These starting days are going to be found everywhere. And so if you remember in the directional trees, when we talked about the animated day signs, and the monkey was there holding the uh, the days, it's found there, it's found here, it's found in all of the codices in different places and in different forms. But this simple formula right here is all you need to know if you're calibrating your calendar. You just need to know, all right, if we're in the year Kali, I'm going to start my year on the date or the tonali 1 Osomati. And that's all you need to know. Other than that, you need to know what part of the year you're going to start it, what what day, and so we'll talk about that a little later. But I just want to show you that this is really much all we need here. This right here is a bloodletting tool that we talked about last lesson 5. Okay, so if you want to give blood, you would use this tool. We haven't talked about it yet, but in the birth almanacs, that they'll use it as they're giving sight or they're welcoming a newborn. And so whenever you see teteo or priests holding the kopali incense bag and they're piercing what is called a cartouche, but they're actually day signs singled out. All 20 days are here if you look all through, but these 4 are singled out. And so that actually starts here. This is one. The first day is sipakli, and then the next day is ehekat, and the last day is shochi. So it goes like that, counterclockwise. And so you'll see like a lot of things in our culture are opposite to Western culture, which is a really nice contrast. So in Western culture, a lot of the times they use clockwise direction for a lot of these things. For us, it's going to be a counterclockwise. Also, like the number 13, for example, is the most sacred number in our culture. It's the most unlucky number in the Western culture. So I just can't get over all of these different contrasts in our cultures. But anyways, you have Sipakli, you have this is Mikisli, Osomatli, and Koskakwautli. These are the same exact day signs that we just singled out right here. And so they're here again. And so what's happening here is they're actually giving birth to the new year with their tools. Okay, so they're giving birth to the new years. These are the only 4 days that the new year can begin on. And that's it. There's no other days. And so all the other days are there as well, but they are not singled out because they are not ever used to give birth to the day. It's only 4 because there are 4 year bearers as well. So any given year bearer, you're going to have a specific day. This is from the Codex Laud. I introduced you to the Laud last week with the lesson 5, the marriage almanac. This is actually the first page of the Codex Laud. And the really amazing thing is, once again, we see those 4 day signs or tonalis. We see the monkey, the skull, the alligator, and the vulture. Now, what's happening here, like I said, they're all in kind of different configurations. So if we count right here, if we count the dots, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 25, 26 if we count the skull. Okay, so we'll go 26 plus 26, and that's going to give us 20 or 52. Okay, so these are 52 years right here, and so these are another 52 years. So This is actually a 52-year calendar count, which is extremely important. We'll talk about that later. But 52 years is a very sacred number in our culture. But this is 52, and then this is also 52. So all together, it's a cycle of 104. 104 is another sacred number, 2 calendar rounds. So it basically takes you 54 years to cycle through all of the years that we have. And so each of these is like 1 Makisli, 2 Makisli, 3 Makisli, 4, all the way to 26. And the really important thing to note here is whenever we do 52-year counts, we usually use the year bearer. So the year bearers are the Tekpat, Kali, Tochli, and Akat. But in this case, we're not using the year bearer. We're actually using the days that are associated with those year bearers. So this is really important because it's showing us that the tonales are so closely linked to the years that they can actually be used on their own without the accompanying year bearer. Like here is the day sign with the accompanying year bearer. Okay, but with the Codex Laud, you only have this and you don't have this, so you have to infer that this is talking about the Tekbat years. Really important because if you have to make that inference, then you have to understand that these are tied to the year bearers. And so this is the from our first lesson, Codex for Jeffrey Meyer. And so this is really cool because this is the eastern direction. So all the Akat years will occur in the east. And so as we know, the east direction is the best. And so Akat years were tended to be really good. And so you have Akat. And the really cool thing about this goes with this part right here, because this is the eastern direction as we learned in lesson 1. The really cool thing is it coincides with the Codex Borgia because it starts with the Sipakli, but it ends with Shochi. So our months in the year are 20 days. So it'll take 20 days to go from our first day of the month to the last day of each month. And so that means that every single month for the year's Akat will start with Sipakli and they will end with Shochi. It's a pretty cool pattern, and it's actually shown here. And this corresponds exactly, if you do the math, it corresponds exactly to that. This is the Tekpat, this is the northern direction. And so you have Tekpats always start with Mikisli, and those 20-day period, the month periods will always end with Koatl, or the snake. And it'll happen every single Tekpat year. And so you can actually use this information now to actually rebuild the calendar. Anybody can do it. This is Kali year, and Kali years we start with Osomatli and we end with Itzcuintli in every month. This is Tochli in the south, and so you start with Koska Cuautli and then you end with Cuautli. So again, it's 20 days from here to here, 20 days from here to here, 20 days from here to here, and 20 days from here to here. I had a hard time remembering which day started the year, but Ruben Ochoa taught me a method that's really cool. If you want to think of Akat and Sipakli, you can remember that when Tezcatlipoca was on his raft, that the Sipakli bit his foot off. So that's how I remember that. And then he taught me to remember this. Just remember that you use Tekpat to kill somebody, and so that's death. Kali, inside the Kali, you have the monkey running around the Kali. That's how I remember that. And then the Tochli is eaten by the Koska Cuautli, or the vulture. Okay, so that's how you can remember that. That's a very nice device that's helped me. This is the Aztec Sunstone from our second lesson. And so the great thing about this is it actually coincides with exactly what we just saw. This is telling us that the Sipakli is going to begin each month and the Shochit is going to end each month. And that's going to be for all of the, where is it at? The Akat years. Right here. This is the Akat. And then you go over here. So these are year symbols, right? And so they're year symbols. And so it's telling you we're going to start Mikisli, end with Koat, and this is going to be in the Tekpat days. So Tekpat goes here, and so these are actually another year bearer sign, and they're actually going together. So you just have to know how to read this. This one is saying the Osomatli and Isquinkli start and end each month, and of course the Osomatli goes with the Kali, so right across here. And lastly, Goska Cuautli and Cuautli, the eagle and the vulture. And then those are going to go with the Tochli, which where's the Oh, here it is. Okay, so right across. And so that even the Aztec sunstone has those dates. So there, it's the purposes of all of these different calibration tools is because these priests actually consulted these books that we're using or learning from, and so they consulted with them to figure out, all right, do I have the calendar correct? Do I have it on the right day? And so it's a calibration tool. That's for the tonali. Those are all of the instances that we have in the pre-Columbian codices, but you can see not one of them is different. They're all saying the same exact thing, which is really remarkable because a lot of people will say, oh, all the cultures had their own calendars. Well, look, these are all books from many different cultures, and they all have the same calendar calibration. Okay, and here we have page 34 of the Codex Borgia. It's actually this is the first page of a section that we'll probably discuss later. Right now we're just looking at the correlation, but this actually goes through all of the months. There's 18 months in the year, and so it goes through them, and it just shows you all of the ceremonies, all of the celebrations, and also whatever other activities may be involved in that month are all here. And so the first month that's shown is Tlakashipa Walisli. And we know this is Tlakashipa Walisli because we have Shipa Totec here. And Shipa Totec is actually the only Teot that is associated with Tlakashipa Walisli. There's no other month where Shipa Totec is involved at all. And so again, these pre-Columbian codices, that's all we need. The first month of the year is one of those four, or the first month of the year is Tlakashipa Walisli. Okay, and the first days depend on what year you're on, but we know it's Tlakashipa Walisli because the Codex Borgia tells us it lists this as the very first month. Not only that, it has a priest here who is looking at the sun. Okay, and so it's telling us that you need to calibrate your Teocalli. They're inside of a Teocalli right here. Okay, your Teocalli is what you're going to use as your astronomical tool to match whatever marker you're using to the sun. And this is actually how our people did it, and we know that because we have the evidence in all the Teocallis. They're aligned to astronomical events. And the really important thing to note that it's showing us here is that our calendar is aligned to astronomical observations. It's not aligned to like mathematical formulas like the Gregorian. It's just based on looking at the sun. As long as the sun is in the correct place, then you know your calendar is aligned and you can start like a Shipa Walisli. This is a scene from the Primeras Memoriales by Sahagún, and they're showing the Laka Shipa Walisli scene, which you can see all of these scenes within here as well. And so that's just additional evidence that that's the first month. And so what we have here, if you follow Talaka Shipa Walisli as the first month, and we count backwards from one Koat until we find the first starting day, you will find that the starting day of the year falls exactly one day after the observable spring equinox in Mexico Tenochtitlan. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Okay, so that means that our calendars are 100% correlated to astronomical observations, specifically the spring equinox. And we see this all around Mexico. All of these Teocalli, they are aligned to the spring equinox, which tells us all these other cultures are starting their years on the spring equinox as well. And so this is actually the Templo Mayor. This is a reconstruction, but this is a really beautiful picture that was made by Magnus Ferro Hansen and Leonardo Lujan, an archaeologist in Mexico. And this is a reconstruction based on his archaeological work. And so he has proven that there was a point in between these two shrines to Tlaloc on the left side and Huitzilopochtli on the right side, where you would have a priest observing the sun rising above. And this was the marker. When the sun rose directly in between these two shrines, that's how they knew that that's the spring equinox. And they said, okay, spring equinox happened today. Let's write it down. Let's document it. Tomorrow we're going to start our new year. And this determined, I'm trying to simplify it, but this determined if you needed to add a leap day, because if the sun is not directly where it's supposed to be, you can add a leap day. And the priest did these adjustments in order to, figure out where exactly should it be, so it's calibrated all the time. And the really cool thing is, as the sun goes from spring to summer, it's actually going to, the sun is actually right on top of Tlaloc during the summer solstice. And then it's right over the shrine to Huitzilopochtli during the winter solstice. Because what will happen is the sun will go here for the summer, and then it'll come back here for the fall equinox in the same exact place. And then it'll come over here to the winter solstice. And so this is Panquetzalisli, and this is Etzalcoatlisli. These are the 2 months that are aligned directly to Tlaloc and to Huitzilopochtli. Okay. In fact, Panquetzalisli is that the literal celebration of the rebirth of the sun, and so this fits perfectly into our pre-Columbian Teocalli, and this calendar correlation that we're talking about is the only one where the months will fall in the right place, where the days will fall in the right place. There's a lot of other calendar correlations out there, and mostly all of them are completely wrong because they don't follow the Pre-Columbian Codices. They're following other documentation that is not correct. It's all contradictory. So we're going to go back, and I'm just going to show you, because we have to look at it with that scientific observation. These priests were really figuring out, okay, is there a spring equinox or not? And so what we have to do is we have to look and we have to see, when did the spring equinox occur in 1521? Because one Coat, it happened in 1521, and I'll show you the Gregorian date in a minute. But this is telling us that in Mexico, on March 10th, at night, 10:45 p.m. is when the spring equinox occurred. Now, our priests couldn't know that because, a lot of people get hung up on, well, it happened at 10:45, so the day is supposed to start on the next day. But you have to understand, it's the observable spring equinox, not the NASA really super specific spring equinox. At night, there was no sun. There's no way for our ancestors to know that it was the spring equinox. So what will happen is, spring equinox occurred at night. They're not going to see it in the morning of March 10th, but they're going to see it the next day, March 11th. And so the priest is going to see it. Go back to the slide. All right, March 11th, this 1521, I see the spring equinox. I didn't see it the day before, but I see it now, or the sun is tied to the location where it's supposed to be. That signifies the spring equinox. Therefore, we're going to start the new year on the next day. So not March 11th, but March 12th. And so here we go right here, March 12th, 1521 is 3 Osomatli, the first day of Tlacashipa-Walisli, and in the year 3 Kali. Because as we saw in the Pre-Columbian Codices, the year has to match the day. So if this is 3 kali, this has to be 3 osomatli. And we know it's osomatli because we said the monkey, jumps around in the house. And so it's osomatli in the year kali. But this has to match with this. And we see that with the codices. If it's 1 kali, it has to be 1 osomatli. In this case, it can't be 3 kali and 5 osomatli or anything like that. It has to match. The numeral has to match and the kali has to match here. And so how we know that, so let me go back. We know that our pre-Columbian codices tell us that in the spring equinox, you need to start uh, your year on Talakashipo okay, on a particular tonali, depending on the year bearer. But watch what happens if we go to 1 Coatl. And this is the way that you have to actually do it. Everybody who works on the calendar knows this is how you do it. You have to go the fall of Tenochtitlan is 1 Coatl. On the day it happened, this is August 13th, 1521. We know it was this day because the Mexica documented in their books the fall of Tenochtitlan, but the Spaniards also documented in their books it was August 13th, 1521. So that's so crucial because now we have a native date that corresponds to a Spanish date. And so all you have to do is uh, take this day, this tonali, and you're just going to count backwards. The Gregorian doesn't even matter actually, only if you want to use it for referencing the spring equinox. But Ruben Ochoa always recommends don't even worry about the Gregorian. Just worry about the native calendars because you don't even have to worry about the Gregorian because you have everything you need in the pre-Columbian books. So 1 Coat, the day before that was 13 Quetzalin, and so we're gonna just count up until we get to the day 3 Osomatli. And we know we're looking for 3 Osomatli because that's what the books say. The books say that the day starts on 3 Osomatli in the year 3 Kali. And so when you go back, you will see that 3 Osomatli falls exactly one day after the observable spring equinox in Mexico Tenochtitlan. And so, as you can see, I didn't use any other source. Just the pre-Columbian codices can tell us exactly what's happening here. And as I said before in the books, all the Kali years start with Osomatli in their months, and they end with Itzcuintli. So you can actually see that pattern here. Osomatli, and then the last day is Itzcuintli. Osomatli, and then the last day is Itzcuintli. And so the really nice thing is that our calendars were just so synced, but there were these mathematical patterns that emerged that made the calendar even easier to understand. So everybody in Mexico Tenochtitlan would know in Tecpat years we start with Mikisli, and then the last day is going to be Coat, and that's just going to repeat all the way throughout. Akat years we start with Sipakli, and we end with Shochi. And so here we have a very masterful view of what the books were saying. Okay, everything the books were saying is right here in this document, and I'll link this in the YouTube description. But that's pretty much it. If you need to rewind or ask me clarifying questions, go for it. But as long as we just follow the pre-Columbian codices, all that confusion with the calendar and who has the right calendar can be alleviated because any person can just look and say, all right, what year are we in? Okay, this is the first day. And you can actually make a spreadsheet like this and just make your own calendar if you want to. Every single year, the day has to start after the observable equinox, and then you're good. So I hope that I was able to show you how to correlate our calendar in a very simplified way. That was my goal. Please give me feedback, any comments that you may have. But this is pretty much it. These are all of the sources that we have. And as you can see, our calendar is based on astronomical observations, very scientific, and follows several mathematical patterns that naturally arise if we follow the formulas that are given to us. So these, I've referenced these pages before in my lessons, but I just wanted to make it clear to you. These are all of the pages that talk about the correlation, and they span several codices. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation.